And they are also excellent in directing drones. So my idea, my crazy utopia, would have been, let's reserve the most desolate place on earth. Maybe some desert in southern Egypt or Libya or I don't know where, Saudi Arabia. Let's say, not a small place, like 200 miles big square, and say to superpowers, you want to have a war, do it there. Your drones fighting the other guy's drones, and let's see who wins, but we can go with our lives on. That would be, in this sense, I would be a militarist. So I really think you know what will soon happen? Something even worse with sex. It will no longer be, that's another consequence of 68, really human sex. Did you meet her? Sorry, I don't want to identify you as a Guardian guy. I know you have problems there, but isn't there a columnist by Guardian, Eve Weissman? Eve, you heard of her?
Eva Wiseman, yeah, she was the Observer.
Observer, sorry, yes, now you are trying to squeeze out with this Stalinist distinction.
Well, they've actually been kicked, they're gone. They're gone, they're not even part of the Guardian anymore.
No,
they've been sold off to
tortoise. Which I often quote, I find it wonderful, because she was shocked when she saw, and I like to see them, they totally depress you. Not hardcore porn movies, but movies about the making of. You put a camera 5 yards behind the whole scene of camera and she saw something which I find totally normal. For her, it's horror. You have a guy on the bed, bam, bam, doing to the woman, and then in the middle of it, he stands up and says, sorry, I'm losing erection. Can somebody bring me the iPhone so that I go to a Pornhub to get erection again? You see the absurdity. You have there the real woman, you need it. But I think this is how our sexuality, that's the big lesson of Freud, is effectively structured. You are never alone with your partner. You must have a fantasy. If you lose fantasy, sexuality is no longer here. And what I am afraid is that even if we will have sex with real persons, who knows what? Maybe they will, in some organic way, produce orgasm combined with some implanted memories, whatever. So I am not a pessimist. I'm not saying artificial intelligence will destroy us or whatever. Maybe it will even produce or give birth to a new form of spirituality, but which will be totally different from our form of spirituality. Our form of spirituality, human, is very specific here. That's why I'm not afraid of the machines. To give you, again, an example that I often quote, you know, computers can be infinitely more strategic thinking, self-learning, and so on, but as far as I know, they can't do two things. First, they cannot develop, you can program it, but spontaneously, I don't think they can develop small daily rituals. You know, we all have them, like if I step here, I don't know what you actually, that it should be at least 3 lines or not step on the dark. You know, these small rituals, they don't have any deep meaning, but they produce the effect of meaning as such. The opposite thing, and this I mean extremely seriously, as far as I know, except if you program it, artificial intelligence cannot swear, curse. Cursing is for me language at its 0 point. Cursing means not just I'm frustrated, but I'm frustrated because I cannot find a proper word. Cursing means, yes, I am in language, but not totally at home in language.
I want to talk about technology. Let's talk about, I was going to go tariffs, but no, let's talk about technology. One of the things, because the question of technological development is whose interest will it serve?
What, tariffs?
Well, no, I was going to go to tariffs, but I thought it'd be too.
Yeah, well, we can, no
I thought it'd be
problem,
too jarring to jump from orgasms to tariffs. So with technology,
But tariffs are obviously Trump's orgasm, no?
I suppose there is a
absolutely no.
there is a way of segueing.
Yeah.
There is a way of segueing.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you about technology. I'll ask you that, just about technology, because whose interest does it serve? Because our opposition isn't to technological development, but whose interest? I mean, one of the things that worries me is surveillance technology, which is being developed by the likes of China, Russia, Israel, and some suggest that it could just make dissent impossible. I mean, you were talking about organising, protesting before, and the limits where they're in, but you can see quite easily how AI, surveillance technology, and so on could create quite a dystopian universe to live in.
Yeah, but I think our chance is that the surveillance technology can be surprised by our stupidity. We cannot beat it, but I am afraid that precisely because it takes everything into account and so on, these surveillance machines can be confused by us doing something that simply cannot be grounded in a rational reason. For example, I spoke with a friend who is very deeply in poker, but poker played by artificial intelligence and so on. And he said, or even chess. Now we know that artificial intelligence can beat every chess player. But you know what gives you a hope? If you do some irrational, unexpected moves, the artificial intelligence gets confused, doesn't know how to react, and so on. And I think that the great thing about being human still is to make the right type of mistake. Not what artificial intelligence can do. I know they can learn from mistakes and so on. I'm not talking about learning from mistakes, but to turn around what appears a mistake into a new positive form. My eternal example, I spoke with a French friend who, and it's very rare for French people, is very critical of France. And he told me the great French cuisine, but it can all be explained by laziness and stupidity. Like a guy was making cheese, he was too lazy, the cheese got rotten, or you get French cheese, you know, it smells bad. Or, I don't know, you have wine, you don't do it correctly, wine, whatever processes, you get champagne, and so on. So this idea of turning a failure, a mistake as such into something new. This, I think, is I'm now even writing a book on it, this is, I think, what is specifically human. So that's the first thing. The second thing, and here I would like to ask you, since you explain it to me. You are just voted out of despair, the best of the bad choices, the Green Party. But you know with whom I sympathize? CAO called some strange Schultz or whatever, Schmidt, I don't know the name, had this idea. It's clear that we are too late to prevent this rising temperatures and so on. The problem, if you want to have supercomputers, is that they spend a lot of energy. So we cannot have green politics and mega computers. But he said ecology is lost, temperature will rise. So we should put all our resources into artificial intelligence, which will not only, it will control our lives, but it may even then, in a way unknown to us, it may even produce solutions for ecology that we even cannot imagine today. I like this radical pessimist view because you know what I'm tired of? This ecology which appears to be anti-anthropocentric, but remains totally anthropocentric. For example, it's my old joke, sorry if I repeat it. There is no good Mother Earth. Are you aware how many mega catastrophes happened on our Earth before even humanity was here? That's how we got coal, oil, and so on. So we cannot rely on nature as that stable background and so on. Second thing, when we talk about how we should realize that we are just one of the among the species on the Earth, I find this basically a very arrogant position, because while apparently humiliating us, you are just one of the species, it nonetheless gives us the unique universal position of taking care also for other species and so on and so on. And we should at least be aware that there is deep ecology is at this level the most arrogant position that I can imagine. We pretend to care for, you know, in deep ecology you even have the idea that not only animals and plants, but even some valleys, rivers, mountains have their own value and so on. No, only for us they have it. Look at mountains. Do you know that till Romanticism, mountains were considered horror? Like till late 18th century, Alps were just a place where you quickly went through to reach Italy. It's Romantics who invented Alps and Switzerland and so on. So my point is that the truly radical position is we cannot rely on nature as our mother, some basic foundation and so on. The situation is radically open, everything is radically contingent. We cannot rely on nature.
Let's take some questions from the audience. I'm going to start with Ollie S. He says, has the left lost its identity beyond being the antithesis of the populist right? I mean, I would say there's more critique of the likes of Kamala Harris, for example, and that kind of liberalism, but Ollie thinks maybe the left, its identity is the antithesis, is just, you know, being anti-Farageism, anti-Trump.
No, the first thing I would like to say here is that the left should first analyze capitalism in a much more radical way, in the sense that, as I like to say, referring to Freud, I often repeat this formula that Trump is the last liberal fetish. Why? Because all those liberal leftists who criticize Trump, they focus on Trump to avoid the key question. Trump didn't fall from the moon. Trump is the result of the crisis of the liberal democratic state. So the only way to get rid of Trump is, I know this sounds Stalinist, a self-criticism. Why can this, I'm not saying it will, give some hope? Because the moment the left will realize this, it will have to get rid of this temptation to play the old liberal democratic welfare state game. I think that if some kind of communism will come, and I think it will be, now I will really provoke you, war communism. Because, no, I don't believe in, new welfare and so on. There will be, that's absolutely clear, such emergency states that, and we got the first taste of these states, that's why I loved COVID epidemics. No, right. For an obvious reason. I basically hate people. And it was a paradise. I was at home working all the day and so on. But more seriously, did you notice how even conservative liberal politicians, whatever they were, like Trump and your own Boris Johnson, they had to do measures which clearly violated at least some of the market rules. For example, didn't under Trump every family or person got $2,000 and so on?
Basic income.
Sorry?
Like a basic income.
Yeah, you see, and with the coming global crisis, we have to prepare now for this type of emergencies, which will absolutely have to involve some kind of communism. So for me, the fact is that liberal capitalism, the way we knew it, it's over. Will it be what a Trumpian fascism, which is now getting universalized? For example, I mention this all the time, I know, but nonetheless, I don't like Orwell. His vision of 84 is wrong, I think. But there is one wonderful thing in it. You know what's the situation in 84? You have 3 mega powers: Oceania, Eurasia, and East Asia. This is where we are today. United States, Russia, and China, and Europe is in between, divided, not clear where. So that's why I think, that's why I'm against Brexit. We should never forget that Trump and Putin, even when they are not, even when they don't agree, they basically speak the same language, I think. This Orwellian language of like, Putin says said openly, remember, Greenland, okay, you take it, but Ukraine is ours, and so on and so on. It's very old-fashioned what we say, but I'm less and less anti-Eurocentric, because European legacy of enlightenment. Don't forget that all the talk about women's rights and so on comes from the legacy of enlightenment, which always had this tremendous potential for self-criticism. Sorry if this sounds Stalinist. But what I want to say is that I'm not dreaming communism. I'm talking about chaotic situations of real crisis, where communism, just in the sense of global coordination, will have to be invented. The point is only, will it be done in the rightist fascist way, or we can do it?
I'm interested in this one as you're a former Yugoslav citizen. And it also touches on, well, I'll say, it's anonymous. What do you think will happen in regards to the student protests in Serbia? I was in Belgrade last year. I'm no
more pessimist. Sorry, go on.
Well, I'm interested in this because you're talking about the emergence of communism in some form in the future. And it strikes me that, you know, in Eastern Europe, they had experience of various Stalinist forms, obviously, and that's trashed the left as a mass force there. Is there any, you know, could you see a left, because the left isn't there, it doesn't have the leadership of those sorts of protests, it's normally kind of Western liberal facing. So what do you think about those student protests, and could you see the re-emergence of a left in Eastern Europe?
I have some doubts, because what fascinated me, I've written about it, as you know, in Serbian protests is that they were, in some ironic sense, law and order protests. There were not this chaotic stuff, break the windows and so on. You know what was for me unique? When the protesters occupied a bridge in Novi Sad, in Vojvodina, north of Belgrade, for 24 hours, then at the end they said, sorry, the bridge will be closed for another 3 hours because we want to clean all the shit, the traces of our... Or there is a wonderful photo, which is for me almost photo of the year, where 2 ladies are on a step, on a wooden chair there in a park, supporting the protests, but they put their shoes off, not to put the dirt on the wooden chair and so on. This sense of order. The problem now is, of course, what to do now. There is, I don't know if this already happened when you were there, but the last news I got is that It's precisely V for Vendetta Part 2. No? There is a tendency, which is, I think, pseudo-radical, which claims no compromise, protest shouldn't stop, which is just go on dreaming about some pure communism and so on. I think this can only end up in new dictatorship.
This is a jarring jump, but I like it. Andrew, why do some people fear death?
Here I will give you a simple answer, which is very personal. I don't fear death, I fear dying. I would even welcome death if it will, you know who died ideally? A guy who was there, Richard Bernstein, told me he was visiting Hannah Arendt when she died. You know, she invited guests, she was sitting, people were debating philosophy. She said, I will just fall asleep a little bit. She was sleeping for 20 minutes. She reawakened, debated again, fell asleep again, reawakened, fell asleep, and didn't reawaken. Can you imagine a more happy death? What I am afraid is, for example, even, I will be very brutal here. I'm very attached to my family, my 2 sons. If one of my sons if I were to be informed he was killed, he died, my instant question would have been, and I'm not kidding here, was it instant or did he suffer? If I were to be informed it was instant, I would say, nice, tell me later, I go on writing my text. If he suffered, I doubt if I would survive.
Wow.